Hello and welcome. Today we will be indulging in Forbidden Fruit, a project that takes a deep look into symbols that evoke the spirit of sex through certain works of art. From the 16th to 18th centuries, sex and sensuality were two taboo subjects to be expressed openly in society. A way for the sexually oppressed artists of the time to express their erotic desires was through some subtle or not so subtle symbols and suggestive messages. These symbols consisted of fruits, flowers, images of demon folklore, and more. With fruits suggesting intimate parts, flowers symbolizing sinful meanings, and demons showing sexual desires, artists were given the freedom to discreetly express the erotic. Implying these true sexual desires using symbols was common knowledge during the 16th to 18th centuries, but allowed for a way for artists to still get away with being sexually suggestive under the church's nose. Since the church and art had been entwined for so long, artists could use these visuals to convey delicate lust or something much more carnal under the guise of something entirely different. Or maybe the artworks were produced by a bit more of a subconscious longing, considering the religious dogma that denounced sexual liberation was highly prevalent at the time that these paintings were rendered. Through three periods of art, the late Renaissance, Baroque, and Romantic, we see similar representations of this cheeky and playful technique to hide the overtly sensual. You can imagine that no artist wanted to be condemned as a sexual deviant. Though even we will see in the three chosen paintings, Niccolò Frangipane's Allegory of Autumn, Michelangelo Meresi de Caravaggio's Boy with the Basket of Fruit, and Henry Fuseli's The Nightmare, that these artists do not seem too concerned with masking the obvious.
Today we'll be talking about evoking the spirit of sex and wet dreams through the works of art. Our first painting of the day is by Niccolò Frangipane from 1597, The Allegory of Autumn. At first glance, we see a horned centaur taking fruit from a table of a sleeping man. But what does this painting really mean? We must look at the small details to decode its sexual deviance. The painting as a whole really represents an erotic dream. The young man in the painting with his shirt open is depicted as sexually available, and the centaur in the painting is depicted as the dream itself. We see the horned centaur reaching across the table to grab a sausage near the man's waist. That alone is a sexual innuendo. And on the other hand, the centaur has a melon with his finger deep in the side. The imagery of the horned centaur gives the viewer of what the sleeping man might be dreaming about, thus making the Allegory of Autumn a painting about erotic dreams. To add on to the idea of sexual puns, a fun fact: in Rome, sexual puns were more widespread than anywhere else, and the idea of fruit became the perfect metaphor for the post-Reformation Rome, a culture that was highly religious and politically orthodox. We can see more examples of sexy fruits in paintings like Caravaggio's Boy with a Basket of Fruit and more to come.
Here we are viewing the oil painting Boy with a Basket of Fruit done by the Italian painter Caravaggio, known for his legacy in Baroque painting. At first glance, we might just see a combination of a still life and a portrait, but there is a sexually deviant nature that lies within this painting that we are going to focus on. The subject of this painting is artist Mario Maniti holding a basket of fruit. He was a friend, and some sources say he was possibly one of Caravaggio's many lovers. It is said Caravaggio was fascinated with the ragazzi da vita, translated to those adolescent street boys. The way the light coming in from the outside of the painting directly hits Mario's exposed shoulder leads the viewer's eyes down to the shirt that is falling off. It almost feels like the shirt is dripping off Mario. Clothing falling off the body, a form of undressing, creates a sexual energy in the painting. The detail in the rendering of the muscles on Mario's shoulder shows the immense amount of focus the painter devoted to this part of the painting, making it a focal point that the artist wants the viewer to notice. After our eyes drift from the shoulder, the next highly rendered and bold focal points is the ripe fruit lying on the basket. In this painting, the fruit is more than just an afternoon snack. The fruit here is another sexual reference, and it evokes the ideas of youth and fertility. Art historian Kitty Jackson pointed out that the same message is also echoed in the image of the young man with his soft exposed skin. Like other artists of the time, Caravaggio also paid his form of respects to biblical references, but oftentimes in more unconventional ways. In this painting, he could have been using the fruit to remind the viewer of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. This time, however, like Kitty states, he might be using the fruit to evoke images of temptation.
The last painting to be looked at is The Nightmare, done by Anglo-Swiss painter Johann Heinrich Füssli, or Henry Füssli as he was primarily known. He was prominent in Britain during the Romantic era, and like most of the artists of that time, he found himself interested in themes that touched on the sublime, divinity of nature and the supernatural, and subconscious states like dreams. Füssli himself is often noted saying that one of the most unexplored regions of art are dreams. We see the woman laying in an extreme position, reminiscent of the mannerist ways of elongating bodies to accentuate the sensual. On top of her sits an incubus, known to German and Italian folklore to be a male demon that engages in sexual intercourse with a sleeping woman. In the corner is a ghostly horse, which could be a playful note on the phrase nightmare, but it was not present in the original sketch for this painting. Our attention is thus focused mainly on the girl and her visitor. Her facial expression may be that of a post-orgasmic state, as Henry Füssli did have interest in the pornographic, see his sketch Symplega of Man with two women. Though most commonly grouped together with sleep paralysis, the role of the incubus definitely has roots in religious fear-mongering of sexual activity. When this painting debuted, it caused such a fascination because of these seemingly contradictory themes of horror and arousal. Considering the dogmas that religion had built in society, a good number of people probably had similar reactions to feeling aroused, that it was also a very dangerous thing to be in the eyes of God. It thus lends aid to the idea that this could be first an artistic documentation of a wet dream, since anything more obvious would not be welcomed in the artistic community. A wet dream is a sexual dream that usually leaves you with feelings of longing and lust that last to the point of orgasm while in slumber. But the church ruins this sensation of desire by saying it was the work of the devil. The incubus in some cases is also a dream symbol of male libido, which helps aid to the idea that this painting could be depicting a wet dream or at least inspired by erotic fantasies. The painting was most likely partly inspired by Füssli's real-life heartbreak and rejection by Anna Landholt. The activity of the painting could be erotic aspects of lost love or unrequited passion. It seems quite representative of sublimated sexual instincts that may have come to Füssli in the form of his dreams and or nightmares, considering this piece is said to have been a creation of his own imagination.
As we've gone through the paintings of masters from the 16th through 18th century, it's obvious that artists had to be very cunning in expressing sexual themes through their art. While we may look at the artwork today and pass over the nods these symbols had suggested, we can see through the lens of an art historian the truth. Furthermore, why said symbols were used? Why did Frangipane choose to involve a demon toying with a sausage and melon? Why was Caravaggio's subject Mario holding a basket of fruits? And why did Fuseli choose to depict an incubus on the sleeping woman? In the end, it was the influence of religion, and specifically the Holy Roman Empire, that had repressed these creatives. But in a way, it also gave them ammunition to both follow the oppressive guidelines but also give leeway towards some double entendres. Ryan, Jess, and Elle have explained the meanings of these subjects inherent to human nature. But let's consider the subject of fruits and demons as I read these verses of the linchpin that binds Catholicism, the Bible. Jude, chapter 1, verses 6 and 7. And the angels who did not keep their positions of authority but abandoned their proper dwelling, these he has kept in darkness, bound with everlasting chains for judgment on the great day. In a similar way, Sodom and Gomorrah and the surrounding towns gave themselves up to sexual immorality and perversion. They serve as an example of those who suffer in the punishment of eternal fire. Genesis, chapter 3, verses 6 and 7. When the woman saw that the fruit of the tree was good for food, and pleasing to the eye, and also desirable for gaining wisdom, she took some and ate it. She also gave some to her husband, who was with her, and he ate it. Then the eyes of both of them were opened, and they realized they were naked. So they sewed fig leaves together and made coverings for themselves. These symbols, stigmatized by the holy word, meant something so much more to the people of that era. And so it became the perfect metaphor for the taboo subject, society's open expression of sex and sexuality.